Welcome to the deep dive. We're really glad you're joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for being here. We have a completely fascinating one for you today.
We really do. So
Mm.
our mission for this deep dive is to analyze some truly captivating material from a text called The Scharff Strategy, Mastering the Art of Invisible Influence.
Which sounds like a spy novel, honestly.
It does. But what we are going to do is uncover how the highly effective tactics of a World War II interrogator can actually serve as a kind of a social superpower in your daily life.
Right, and we really do mean your daily life. We're talking about using these strategies whether you were walking into a tense salary negotiation.
Or trying to decode the true intentions of a business partner.
Exactly. Or even just navigating a really sensitive conversation with your spouse.
It bridges this incredible gap between high-stakes historical espionage and, the everyday psychology of human interaction.
We are essentially looking at a manual for understanding how people operate when they're guarding information, and more importantly, how we can get them to willingly let that guard down.
Without ever making a demand.
Right, no demands.
Okay, let's unpack this because the core scenario used to introduce this is so vivid. Imagine you are a downed Allied pilot.
Okay.
It's 1933. You've been captured behind enemy lines. Naturally, based on everything you know, you expect to be thrown into a freezing, dark room.
You expect a bright light shine directly into your eyes.
Right, and some terrifying guy in a trench coat screaming at you to talk. But that does not happen.
Not at all.
Instead, your captor invites you for a pleasant walk in the woods.
A walk in the woods.
Yeah, he offers you some delicious homemade cookies that his wife just sent him in the mail. He doesn't ask you for your squadron's coordinates,
No, he just casually chats about the engine specifications of your airplane.
speaking as if he is reciting a manual he memorized years ago.
And the brilliant and honestly somewhat unsettling reality of that scenario is that by the time that walk in the woods is over, you, the prisoner, have confirmed his supposed knowledge.
You've unknowingly filled in the blank spaces of his strategic puzzle.
Yes. You walk back to your cell, genuinely thinking to yourself, I didn't tell that nice man a single thing he didn't already know.
But in reality, you just handed over the absolute crown jewels of your mission.
It is almost unsettling when you realize how easily we volunteer our secrets just because someone hands us a cookie and acts friendly.
It really is. The man behind this method was Hanns Scharff. He became known as the master interrogator of the German Luftwaffe.
And his methods revealed this foundational insight into human psychology that most of us completely ignore.
Which is?
Scharff discovered that the human mind is essentially a locked door. But the crucial part is that this door cannot be kicked down from the outside.
Oh, wow.
It can only ever be opened from the inside.
Which means we have to rethink entirely how we approach people when we need information.
Completely.
Because if we look at traditional tough guy interrogation, the kind we see in the movies, it immediately creates this rigid me versus you dynamic.
You are the enemy, I am the captor.
Exactly. But Scharff's friendly approach, taking walks, discussing philosophy, showing empathy, it completely flips the script.
What's fascinating here is the underlying neuroscience that explains exactly why this works.
Like the brain science.
Yeah. Traditional threats instantly trigger the amygdala. That's the brain's alarm bell. People go into fight or flight, they get stubborn, and their cognitive processing literally narrows.
They just shut down.
They go quiet or they start lying to protect themselves. You cannot get reliable information from a brain in survival mode.
But Scharff essentially hacked their biology.
He did. By treating his sources as peers rather than prisoners, he kept the interaction out of the amygdala entirely.
He kept it in the prefrontal cortex.
Exactly, which is where we are wired for social bonding.
Yeah.
We are biologically programmed as social animals to share information with people we perceive as being in our tribe.
Here's where it gets really interesting because the source redefines a word we use all the time: empathy. The concept of radical empathy is presented here not as a moral virtue, but as a highly calibrated tactical tool.
We usually think of empathy as just, being a nice person.
Yeah, being kind. But in this context, it is about seeing the world so clearly through another person's eyes that you can literally predict their next move.
It is empathy weaponized for understanding, and the application for you listening right now is profound.
How so?
Well, if we want to gather information from someone, a coworker, a partner, a teenager, we have to let go of the need to win the argument.
The moment we start arguing, we've already lost the intel.
Precisely. Instead, we need to become the most intensely curious, non-judgmental people in the room. When people feel deeply understood and completely safe, they naturally stop guarding their secrets.
But is it just about playing nice? Because, I can be incredibly nice to my teenager and they will still just give me one-word answer when I ask how their day was.
Fine.
Okay. There has to be more to the mechanics of this than just smiling and offering a cookie.
You're absolutely right. It's not just about playing nice. Being nice is just the prerequisite to get them out of fight or flight.
Okay.
The actual mechanics of getting them to open up rely on what we can call the expert's trap, or the illusion of the full puzzle.
The illusion of the full puzzle.
Yeah. Normally, when we want to know something, we ask a direct question. We say, what happened at that closed-door meeting? Or, what are your plans for the weekend?
Sure. That's how conversation works.
But asking a direct question immediately shows your hand. It signals a gap in your knowledge.
And it instantly puts the other person on the defensive because they know you want something they have.
Right. The question itself is the trigger. So Scharff approached this from the exact opposite direction. He would sit down with the source and act as though he already had the entire story mapped out.
He would confidently lay out a narrative composed of about 90% known verified facts.
And then he would leave 10% as carefully placed, deliberate gaps or slight errors.
And the psychology behind this relies on the Zeigarnik effect.
Yes. The human brain feels this overwhelming, compulsive need to complete an unfinished task. or to correct a mistake.
It's like an itch you have to scratch.
Exactly. When our ego hears someone state a slightly incorrect fact about a topic we are experts in, it physically pricks us to jump in and fix it.
This perfectly explains why the fastest way to get an answer on the internet isn't to ask a question
It's to post the wrong answer.
and wait for 10 people to fiercely correct you in the comments.
Exactly. That is the Zygarnik effect in action. Scharff would be chatting with a captured pilot, and because Scharff seemed to know everything about the plane and the route, the pilot already felt completely safe.
He felt like the interrogation was over before it began.
Right. Then Scharff would casually state a wrong detail. He might say, well, obviously you guys were flying at 20,000 feet.
And the pilot's ego would instinctively push him to correct the record.
He would say, no, we didn't fly at 20,000 feet. The clouds were way too thick. We stayed at 15,000. Boom. Intelligence gathered. And the pilot doesn't even realize he was just interrogated.
Wait, so how does that translate to the salary negotiation we talked about earlier? I can't just walk into HR and state a random number, hoping they correct me.
No, you don't state a random number. You do your homework so you have that 90% of the puzzle.
Okay.
Then, instead of asking, what is the salary range for this role, which puts HR on the defensive and gives them the power, you state a calibrated hypothesis.
Like what?
You say something like, based on the market rate and the responsibilities we've discussed, I assume the budget for this senior role is locked in at around $150K.
But doesn't walking up and guessing their budget make you sound arrogant? How do you do that without sounding like a know-it-all who is trying to corner them?
It all comes down to the delivery. You aren't making a demand, you are making a gentle assumption.
A gentle assumption.
If you phrase it collaboratively, their ego and their corporate guidelines will kick in. They will instinctively correct you. They'll say, actually, our ceiling for this specific tier is $135K.
Wow. You now have the exact information you needed.
And you never had to ask the defensive question. You simply presented a puzzle with a missing piece, and they couldn't resist putting the piece in for you.
That is a completely different way of navigating a conversation. So if asking a direct question is a trap, how do you actually keep a dialogue moving?
Good question.
What does a conversation look like if you can't ask the basic who, what, or where questions?
This is where we get into the tactical toolkit. The first rule is to kill the interrogation words. Who, what, where, when, and why.
Kill them entirely.
Yes. The moment you use those words, you trigger alarms. You force the other person's brain to construct an entirely new sentence from scratch.
Which reminds them that they are actively providing you with data.
Exactly. So instead of asking those alarming questions, we use the confirm or disconfirm strategy.
Right. There is a brilliant historical example of this in the source.
Yes.
If Scharff wanted to know where an Allied base was, asking where is your base located would cause the prisoner to immediately shut down. The alarms would ring.
So instead he used a statement. He would say, I assume you guys are still flying out of the base near Ipswich since the weather there has been so clear lately.
Notice what that statement does. It forces a reaction without demanding one.
If the pilot instinctively scoffs and says, Ipswich, no way, that place is a total mud pit.
Scharff has just scored massive intelligence.
Without a single direct question,
Yeah.
He now knows the base is definitely not Ipswich.
And he knows the real base must be in an area with different weather or better drainage.
He drastically narrowed his search grid just by making a slightly incorrect assumption.
I can see how this works in a high-stakes scenario, but what about at home? Let's say I want to know what my spouse's plans are for the weekend without sounding like I'm managing their schedule.
You avoid the what are you doing this weekend trap. That can sound like a demand for their time. Instead, you use a confirm or disconfirm statement. It seems like you've got a pretty busy weekend planned with the house projects.
If they don't,
They'll immediately correct you. Actually, no, I was just planning to relax on Saturday and maybe run some errands on Sunday.
you get the full itinerary without ever asking a scheduling question.
Exactly.
Implementing this seems to require something most of us really struggle with, which is immense patience.
Oh, absolutely.
We live in this immediate culture where we want answers the very second we ask for them. But the strategy relies heavily on what is called the slow burn.
Scharff knew that patience is a force multiplier. If a prisoner started to clam up or get tense, Scharff didn't press harder.
He completely removed the information pressure.
By just changing the subject to something totally mundane, he would start talking about the quality of the tea they were drinking or the weather.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, what Scharff was doing is a form of low-intensity stealth interrogation.
Yes. When you keep the stakes of a conversation seemingly very low, the source heavily underestimates the value of the information they are leaking.
And part of this slow burn is learning how to use silence.
We generally hate social tension.
We really do.
If you just let silence hang in a conversation, just a few seconds longer than is comfortable, most people will scramble to fill that void with information just to ease the awkwardness.
It is amazing how uncomfortable silence makes people. We will say almost anything to fill dead air.
We really will.
And that ties directly into what might be Scharff's most brilliant and definitely his most counterintuitive tactic.
Developing a poker face.
Or ignoring the prize.
Hmm.
Imagine a prisoner accidentally drops a massive secret, something Scharff had been actively trying to figure out for months.
Most of us in our daily lives would lean in. Our eyes would get wide.
We would start taking mental notes or asking immediate follow-up questions.
Which is exactly what you shouldn't do. That requires master-level emotional regulation.
It's a process of social desensitization.
Right. If you show excitement when someone tells you a secret, you are signaling to them that they just handed you a highly valuable weapon.
The moment they realize that, they will regret it.
And shut down entirely to prevent further damage. But Scharff, he would literally yawn.
A yawn. That's incredible.
He would wave his hand and say, oh yes, we've known about that for weeks. Anyway, let's get back to those engine specs.
By acting bored and unimpressed, you trick their brain into thinking the information was totally trivial.
And because it feels trivial, they feel perfectly comfortable continuing to talk and share even more.
I think about how hard that is in a typical office environment. Someone drops a juicy piece of workplace gossip or a major shift in company strategy, and it takes every ounce of willpower not to say, wait, what? Tell me everything.
Exactly. But the second you do that, the vault closes. They realize they've said too much.
So what does this all mean for us fundamentally? It introduces this profound philosophy of the invisible man.
The invisible man.
Scharff was incredibly successful because he didn't have a big ego. He did not need to be the smartest guy in the room.
He just needed the other person to think that they were the smartest guy in the room.
Yes, if we want to use this technique, we have to kill our own ego. We have to be willing to let others win the conversation so that we can quietly win the information.
That lack of ego is exactly why these methods are so devastatingly effective. Research from CREST, the Center for Research and Evidence on Security Threats, backs this up perfectly.
What did they find?
Their studies show that sources who are interviewed using these Scharffian techniques consistently and drastically underestimate how much information they actually revealed.
They walk out of the room feeling victorious.
They feel like they were strong, that they held their ground, and that they didn't break.
In the world of espionage, and honestly in daily life, the absolute best source of information is the person who has no idea they are a source.
And we can see how this translates right into modern leadership. We talk about Scharffian leadership.
The absolute best leaders do not just stand at the front of the room and bark orders at their team.
Because that triggers the exact same resistance as a bad interrogation.
Instead, a great leader presents a set of carefully arranged facts in such a way that the new strategy or the new direction appears to be the only logical conclusion.
The team feels like they discovered the solution themselves.
And because they think it was their idea, you get total unforced buy-in. They feel they are in control of the narrative.
It is a phenomenal way to lead, but we also have to talk about how to use these concepts defensively, because this might be the most crucial application today.
Absolutely.
We are living in an era of highly targeted algorithms, social engineering, and misinformation. True preparedness today isn't just about having physical survival gear.
It is about cognitive preparedness.
Wait, how are algorithms interrogating us? I get how a salesperson might use a friendly approach, but how does an app on my phone do this?
Think about the Zeigarnik effect we discussed earlier. When you are scrolling through a social media feed and you see a post with a blatantly wrong fact, like someone ranking the best movies of the decade and putting an objectively terrible movie at #1, what's your immediate instinct?
To jump into the comments, tell them they're completely out of their mind, and list the actual best movies.
Precisely. The algorithm just played the expert's trap on you.
Wow.
It served you a deliberate error rage bait to provoke your ego into correcting the record. And in doing so, you just handed over your engagement data, your preferences, and your time.
It interrogated you without ever asking a question.
When you deeply understand the illusion of knowing it all and the mechanics of the friendly approach, you start to see the matrix.
You can spot when an app is using a missing puzzle piece to farm your engagement, or when a negotiator is using the friendly ghost approach to bypass your logical defenses.
By mastering these tactics, you effectively make yourself uninterrogatable.
You essentially build an immune system against manipulation. Which brings us to a really fascinating historical paradox at the heart of all this.
What's the paradox?
Hanns Scharff was a master interrogator working for the German Luftwaffe in World War II. By any historical measure, the sources make clear he was working for the wrong side.
Right.
Yet the specific methods he developed to gather intelligence were fundamentally more humane. They relied entirely on empathy and connection.
Far more so than the physically coercive, brutal tactics that were often used by many on the right side of the war.
It is a striking observation about human nature. His unprecedented success was not built on cruelty or dominance, but rather on a deeply accurate understanding of human connection.
At our core, we all just desperately want someone to talk to who truly understands us and who won't judge us.
The underlying lesson here is about learning to navigate the world with a soft touch rather than a heavy hand.
That is a powerful takeaway. And there is a specific challenge for you, the listener, to try out this week to put this into practice. It's called a question fast. The challenge is to go to an entire lunch or sit through an entire meeting without asking a single direct question.
Try to rely entirely on statements like, I wonder, or it seems like.
If you know the budget for a project is $10K, don't ask, what's the budget? Say, the budget is locked at $10K, right?
Or at home, don't ask your partner what time they're leaving. Say, you're heading out at 6, I assume.
It is a fantastic exercise. And for your next high-stakes conversation, maybe you are finally having that talk about a promotion, or you have to sit down with a colleague who is usually very defensive.
Do not bring a list of interrogating questions. Instead, bring a nearly finished puzzle.
Lay out the pieces you already know. Be the warmest, friendliest, most intensely curious person they have interacted with all day.
And then simply wait in silence for them to place that final puzzle piece for you. You will be completely shocked at how much people are willing to give you when you simply stop trying to take it from them.
It fundamentally changes how we view every conversation we have. From an argument with a teenager to a complex business negotiation, it is all just puzzle pieces and patience.
It really does. And looking at all of this, the neuroscience of bypassing the amygdala, the tactical use of radical empathy, the complete removal of the ego, this raises an important question that we all have to ponder.
What's that?
If the absolute pinnacle of extracting information from someone, the most effective method ever devised in the history of interrogation, relies entirely on making that person feel completely safe, perfectly understood, and totally free from judgment, does the line between tactical manipulation and genuine human connection actually exist? Or is the ultimate form of influence, at the end of the day, simply radical, weaponized empathy?
that is something to think about the next time you find yourself eagerly filling in a silent pause in a conversation.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us for this deep dive.